just look at 5 things that are important to know about stress, common effects of stress, and strategies for managing your energy to manage your stress. And that really comes in the space of managing your emotional energy. There's physical and spiritual aspects to that, but I'm going to really kind of go more specifically into emotional energy today. So first of all, let's talk about what is stress. It's a feeling of emotional and or physical tension. It can come to us emotionally, it can come to us physically. And when it comes really hard, it tends to feel like a combination of those two. And it can come from an event outside of ourselves, but it also can come from a thought within ourselves. And that event or that thought or that circumstance can create a feeling within us of frustration, anger, nervousness. There's a lot of different descriptors for what that might feel like. And in response to that, our body then reacts, and it'll react to that demand or it'll react to that challenge. And sometimes it reacts in a really functional, beneficial way, and other times it can react in a way that we don't want it to react. So examples of that would be sleeplessness. That can be one of our body's reactions to stress, and all of a sudden we're not sleeping well, or sleeping too much, or sleeping at times when we don't want to be sleeping. So kind of things shut down. Another example that would be different from that would be just kind of that flooding that can happen in our minds, where it's like so many things that it's hard to sort through. And that can almost feel like emotional paralysis. Like there's so many things, I can't sort them all out because I'm just kind of flooding with all of what is going on. And those experiences are common to all of us. Stress has to go somewhere. And when it's internalizing within us, our body is going to react to that. And so those things do happen. The other side of stress that I'm not going to focus a lot on today, but I wanted to mention, is that stress can be positive, in adequate doses, and that really means short bursts. So I am guessing that everybody on this call has at times completed a task through the adrenaline rush that came from the deadline that was right there, or from a resident who's standing in front of you, and it creates a short burst of stress, and you either avoid going the wrong direction with something, or it helps you resolve a complaint, meet a deadline, that type of thing. I liked this quote by Hans Selye, and it says, "It's not stress that kills us, it's our reaction to stress." And the reason why I wanted to share that with you today is because that quote really says to us that stress happens, and we don't always have a choice about the stressors in our lives, either past or present. But what we can do is work on our emotional strength, our mental acuity, in order to manage that stress, manage the energy around that stress, manage our reaction to that stress. That's where we can make a difference in our lives, if we're not able to step away from stressors that just are a part of living here on planet Earth, and definitely true for all of us. So I did something a little bit different today than what I've done for some of the past sessions, because I just think this is such a good handout, and it goes into some of where we're going to go over the next several sessions. And that is the handout from the National Institute of Mental Health, and it's called 5 Things You Should Know About Stress. And it provides a couple of links that are important, and it just summarizes this really well. Like an expanded infographic almost. And so I thought that this would be really beneficial. And so the 3 types of stress are identified on that handout. And those are routine stress that are related to the pressures of life and responsibilities. And then another type of stress is stress that can be brought about by a sudden negative change or a significant life change. My son is engaged, and there's going to be a wedding in September, the first in our family. He's the oldest grandson on both sides. And so while we're all very excited about that, that is, a life stressor, and it can bring about some stress. So even though it says sudden negative change on here, it can also be changes that are just life changes and that are generally very, very positive, but just have with them a lot of dynamics that can create stressors. And then the final category is traumatic stress. And all three of these are relevant and definitely things to know. Some of them may apply more to you than others. But the benefit of knowing the three types of stress is because I guarantee that there are those around you who have experienced types of stress that you may never have experienced. And it's real and it's relevant, and we need to be aware. The last thing I wanted to say about stressors is that they can be one time, they can be short term, or they can be repeated over time. So you've got multiple dimensions here to think about. One is the three types of stress, and then the other is the frequency or duration of stress, whether it's one time, short term, or repeated over time. So common effects of stress, and this parallels really well with what we've been talking about in terms of managing our energy across 4 different domains. And this identifies it within 3. One is your body, second is your mood, and that includes your emotions, and the third is your behaviors. And so if you look on this chart, you can probably identify areas that stress affects you, because it's different for all of us. And some of these can, if they persist, can have very detrimental effects on us physically and emotionally. And when that happens, they also can have undesirable effects on our relationships or the way we're relating to those around us. So take a moment to see, does stress more commonly for you impact your body, your mood, or your behavior? So which one of those columns has more examples for how stress affects you? And then if you want to just if you are up for sharing, you do not have to, but if you are willing to share, just is it your body, your mood, or your behavior? Because my guess is we have all 3, across all of our population at JC Heart Company. And so as we learn about and work with one another, team with one another, it's important to understand that the way stress affects you may be different than the way it affects other members of your team. So take a moment there. So, and it may be all 3, or it may be 2 of them. I don't mean to imply by any means that it's just one of those. All right, yeah, so a lot of people are identifying with the fact that it's moving across all 3 of those areas. So, and that's not uncommon. So it's a good thing to think about. And if it's all 3 for you, one of the things you can consider is, where does it start and where does it build to? Because if you really can figure out where it starts and what the triggers are for that, you have then a focus for sort of targeting stress management and sort of kicking in your stress management system. And a lot of that really has to do with, mental and emotional kinds of strategies. So All right, we'll keep going here. The second handout that I gave you, it has Resiliency Champions at the top. And this is where we really get into how we manage stress. There are ways to manage stress that are identified on the National Institute of Mental Health handout. And those are really good. So use those to the extent to which they are beneficial. I thought that a lot of them are pretty typical to what you see out there. And so I wanted to supplement it with a deeper focus or a more intentional focus on managing your emotional energy to manage your stress. So if you look at that handout, I thought it would be great to just point out the question that I think people who are really within stressful situations or really struggling with stress think to themselves, and it's like, why do some people manage stress better than me? What is it that helps them be what is oftentimes perceived as so strong in the face of stress? And a lot of it has to do with strength and resilience and grit. There are those that will say, not intelligence like how smart are you, just your emotional intelligence. And so that's another space. If you are working to exercise those muscles, that can really help your management. So when you see those, you could think about what manifests for you when you see those words, and perhaps you see someone who is stronger, more resilient to the things that are going on around them. And then think on the other side of that about stress, exhaustion, high pressure. And a lot of times we feel resistance to those words, like, no, I don't want to go into stress and exhaustion and high pressure. So that's why we're talking about and elaborating a little bit more about emotional energy and stress, because, and I can't say this enough, you guys, it's a learned skill. Like, anybody can learn how to manage stress and how to channel your emotional energy. It's not something that we're just naturally always gifted with at birth, but through a set of strategies or procedures that really translate into habits and disciplines, we can learn to manage emotional energy and manage stress. And it really has to do with practice and repeat. Sometimes people say, like, shampooing your hair, you lather up and you rinse and then you repeat. And it's just that kind of a cycle that you have to think about. So doing something once or twice, doing something without a consistent rhythm isn't going to get you there. You really have to decide and make a commitment to how you want to lean into developing that emotional energy management muscle and therefore manage your stress. So doing one thing well and consistently and on a rhythm and building that into a discipline is far better than trying this, that, and another thing. So my encouragement to you today is to find one thing that you're going to do differently. It's either adding something in or taking something out, but do one thing. And once that becomes a habit, which has to be at least 66 days, then add something else to it if stress is really the thing that you want to lean into in your resiliency. So what I've given you below is a few different habits or disciplines that you can think about. And the first category are habits that you can eliminate, things you can stop doing to avoid stress and burnout. And they fall in a few different categories. The first category is really considered to be more of like a self-destruction category. So it's managing your stress by engaging in behaviors that are not physically or emotionally productive for you. And there's some examples there. Another is reactive behavior. So this is when a stressor comes and suddenly we're taking action without thought or planning. And it really, we're built to do that. That's fight or flight, right? And that can have a protective element to it. But if we are doing that, either fleeing or fighting every single day or every single time something comes up, it becomes very reactive. And that doesn't avoid stress and burnout. It actually contributes to it. And then the third is avoiding assumptions or conclusions. One of the things some of you have heard me talk about, and I love to talk about this, is automatic thoughts. So we all have automatic thoughts that come into our mind with certain situations or certain interactions with people, and they can almost just take over because we don't think about it. They're just automatic. So this is thinking about, what do you make assumptions about? And the big thing is, don't assume the worst. Yes, things happen. And if you assume the worst, you're going to just contribute to your stress. And then below that, so those are some good things to think about. And below that are some habits you can gain to build stronger emotional energy management. And these also just hit some categories of consideration for everyone. And the first one is breathe. Bringing your tension and your heart rate down is amazing. We've talked about box breathing in different areas at JC Heart Company. If you haven't had a presentation on that, I'm more than happy to present that. Just, let me know and put it in the chat. I'm happy to build that in. I didn't want to keep going over that if people have heard it and are using it. So give me some feedback about box breathing, but that's one of the easiest ways to remember a deep breathing strategy. So if you deeply breathe and slowly exhale several times in a focused way, it can help bring down tension and heart rate, adrenaline. So also just, it's called recapitulating the situation, and you're just slowing down and changing your perspective. So what is a different way I could look at this same situation? What is a different interpretation? And sometimes you can just think to yourself, what would another person, not me, think about this situation, just to push outside of our own perspective and take on the perspective of someone else. And if you're high empathy, that's probably a little easier bridge for you than if you're low empathy. But empathy, again, is a learned skill. And so that's something you can practice. And that can be a great emotional energy management strategy, is utilizing empathy to change your perspective. And that leads us into the one that says demonstrate empathy down there. So I want to connect those two. And then you also can build in specific skills and strategies to channel your anxiety into problem solving. And this is where we go to solution focused. So there's a situation, I'm stressed out. How can I take a solution focused approach to this? And there are some really good solution focused or problem solving steps that can get you there. A lot of people have been exposed to that. Again, if I'm mentioning something you want me to go deeper on at some point, throw it in the chat, and we can build some of this out. Sleep, sleep, and sleep can be very beneficial. If you are low on sleep, you're probably going to be high on stress, and you're probably going to be struggling to get the mental acuity and focus to manage your emotions and to use any of these other strategies. The other thing is, what happens when we're overtired? We tend to eat to stay awake, or drink too much caffeine, or feel like we're never relaxing quite enough, and utilize things that help us relax. So it can be a really vicious cycle, you guys. So sometimes, sleep is a great approach to starting your emotional energy management. Get sleep, wake up with a clearer head, and then go to it. And then the last is radical forgiveness. It's just deciding that you're not going to hold on to negative emotions. And a lot of times that requires forgiving others. And that's a whole process in and of itself, oftentimes easier said than done. But the fact of the matter is, the freedom comes to you, the person who is forgiving. That's where the freedom lies. And it's a gift to yourself. So if you think about radical forgiveness, about just letting go of maybe things that have built up over time, that can be another really good strategy for stronger emotional energy management. And then you don't have kind of that pile of yuck that all the stressors just keep hitting and things keep piling up, and it just feels like it never quite empties down. So those are some good things to be considering. And Mark Devine wrote the book, The Unbeatable Mind. And I really like that book a lot. I like a lot of his work. He's a former Navy SEAL, so he definitely knows about unbeatable minds. And he gives us this quote: to live an uncommon life, one needs to learn uncommon disciplines. And much of the content that you see on this page is inspired and directly connected to an unbeatable mind kind of perspective, because wouldn't we all love to have that? And again, it takes determination, commitment, practice, and building those habits or disciplines over time. So hopefully that gives you some strategies to think about in terms of habits or disciplines you can eliminate, or habits and disciplines you can add. And then again, just a reference that there also are some ways to manage stress on the National Institute of Mental Health handout that I gave you. And so what I want to invite you to do now is to just think about a habit. I mean, initially I always tell people, think about like 2 or 3 that you think will help your ability to grow and manage your emotional energy and stress. And then look at those 2 or 3 and just pick one that you're going to do, and do it for the next 66 days or the next couple of weeks and see how that goes. A lot of times you start to get immediate relief, and then you come up against challenges, and that's when most people quit. So I'm going to tell you, mark 66 days on your calendar and start that habit or that discipline, either by adding or eliminating, and commit to the next 66 days, and then see how that impacts your stress, instead of deciding after a few days or a few weeks, because you've really got to build it into your repertoire first. And then, how will you continue to cultivate that? So that's really what I mean. Are you going to commit to 66 days, or are you committing to a week? And then who will be your accountability partner? It's always good to talk to someone about changes, habits, and disciplines that we're building, because as resiliency champions, we want to help build each other up, not tear each other down. So our strength comes through ourselves and what we bring to every situation and relationship, and the connectedness that bonds us as human beings and as a JC Hart family. So give that a little bit of thought, and then we will wrap up. And if you want to share anything in the chat related to something that really stood out to you today, that is always helpful for everyone, because whatever you highlight will help reinforce something important to someone else. So just a couple minutes to do that, and then we'll wrap. All right, so hopefully you've had a chance to identify a few habits to either potentially add or eliminate. That gives you a little bit of a map and some thought material for the future. Sorry, I totally skipped that word. And then be sure to just identify one thing for now and commit to a period of time. My hope is you'll give it at least 66 days to really build in as a habit for yourself. And so, Diane, thank you for your comment about the value of these sessions for you. And if there's anything that stands out to anyone else, please put that in there. So you don't have to make a commitment, but it's just helpful to punctuate that for one another as we build this community. And the other thing I wanted to say about stress is it's really important to seek help when you need it. And just a reminder that we have a confidential EAP, Employee Assistance Program, at JC Hart Company. So if you're feeling overwhelmed or you can't cope, or you're using drugs or alcohol more frequently, experiencing disruptions in functioning, or having suicidal thoughts, it's really important to seek help. And that is true for those you love as well. So I can't say enough about reaching out. Sometimes people think there's weakness in that. That's actually where the strength lies, in recognizing that you need to talk something through or get additional deeper strategies or help with something. So never hesitate to reach out, either within JC Hart through our confidential EAP or through resources, external to the company, depending on what you're most comfortable with. So Resiliency Champions, we're starting small, we're starting somewhere, and hopefully you have an intention. I left the 2 weeks here, but I really want to say for the next 66 days. And hopefully you've decided who can be your accountability partner, partners with that. Just have conversations about how it's going. Be sure to let me know if there are things you want to know more about. You can toss that in the chat or reach out to me by text, email, or phone about that as well. And our next session will be, and that'll be session 6 for 2021, yay. That'll be Friday, April 9th. And I had mentioned, I believe last session, that once you've attended 6 sessions, I have something for you. And so Tracy is keeping track of that. And if you've been to all these sessions, then you will be receiving something following our 6th session next week. And let me tell you where we're headed. I thought that stress was a good way into an area that I think is really important for us to talk about as resiliency champions. And so this will be sort of single topics per week, but I think we're ready to bridge from stress into what I call red flag kinds of conversations. So one topic, and the topic that we'll hit next time around, is depression. And what is depression? What are the types of depressions? What are the red flags for depression? If I'm feeling that way, what are some things I can do? And then the session after that, we'll go into anxiety. And I definitely want to hit stress, depression, and anxiety. And if there are other emotional kinds of struggles or challenges, you can confidentially let me know that, and I'll build those topics in as well, because this is for you guys. And it's really important to me that we get information in your hands that helps you become resiliency champions and build those around you into resiliency champions, both at JC Hart Company and in your personal lives. So if I don't see you before, I'll see you Friday, April 9th. And please, please act on what you've committed to today. And it's Friday. Have a strong day. Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Tracy, for stepping into the support role today. Appreciate you all. Take care. Yes, Kim, and happy Easter. Tracy, maybe we'll have to figure out some closeout music. It feels like the music should be playing now.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Michelle, you have a wonderful weekend as well. Great to hear from you guys.
I'm going to go hop into that other meeting, Pamela. I'll see you there.
Yep, sounds good. I think we're finished up here. So take care, everyone.